guys, welcome back. Let's talk about what I read in the month of March. So I read 7 books last month, so numbers are coming back up. Very excited to see that. Here are my stats for last month. I read a lot of good books. I read a few not so great books. So let's talk about it. First of all, I read The Book of Lost Things. This was my Buzzwordathon book. It had to have thing in the title and it had to have a book on the cover. So this is the one that I chose so that it would do the Buzzwordathon and the cover challenge. It was okay. I was between 3 and 4 stars. I did end up giving it 4 stars because I kept thinking about the book when I wasn't reading it, like trying to figure out what was going to happen next. I did like the fairy tale aspect of it and how it brought in, you know, like classic fairy tale stories. Upon further research, it does say that it is young adult in Goodreads. However, it is not a young adult book. It's very much a coming of age story. So the main character is 12, which makes it feel like it should be young adult, but there are very grown-up themes in the book. In this story, the main character's mother is sick, and she's sick from the very beginning, so that's not really a spoiler. She does end up dying. And then he's having to navigate life after that. So of course, you know, dad finds somebody else, ends up remarrying, so he has a stepmother. And also he's dealing with the fact that he's able to hear books whispering. So like it talks about how books are like sentient, and he ends up stumbling into this other place where the stories are real. And he, of course, is trying to get back home. And so he goes on this journey and he meets these characters along the way. And of course, the characters follow different stories. Some are, you know, pretty obvious, like Snow White and the Seven Dwarfs, things like that. He's following along so that he can get back home. All the while, the Twisted Man is trying to get him to do something, and you kind of get what it is as the story goes that he wants, and then by the end the little boy realizes, you know, what he needs to do to get back. So the ending, I was a little torn on whether I liked it or not. It is not necessarily a happy ending, but then there is a happy ending in a way, and I kind of think that that reflects life. So the whole book really is a metaphor for growing up, so leaving childhood and going into adulthood and kind of having that innocence taken away, and that theme kind of shows up in a couple of different ways. Overall, I liked it. The next book that I read, however, was not good. I read That Time I Got Drunk and Saved a Demon because my year in Aldia prompt was to read a book with a drink on the cover, and I thought it would be something fun and lighthearted, and it was fun, kind of. The use of modern slang, like saying sus, maybe it's kind of boomerish of me, but I hated that. I hated having the modern slang in there. It pulled me out immediately. Now, the book did make me laugh, and I know that it's meant to be funny. Like, I know it's not a serious book, it's meant to be funny. And it was funny. There were times that I laughed, but it just was not for me. I don't know if it was that I wasn't in the mood to read something that was just over the top silly like that or what, but I didn't like it that much. Kudos though, one of the my favorite things about it was the nods to the New Orleans culture, especially food. I went to New Orleans several years ago now. The best food I have ever eaten in my entire life. Loved it. The fact that this woman went out into like the swamp thing and literally like killed an alligator so that she could cook it and cook him gator tail was wild. And not only that, the fact that that was what sealed the deal for him. He was like, I'm gonna marry her. Okay. Like I said, it just was not for me. I ended up giving it 2 stars. It wasn't like torturous, I guess, but I was definitely ready for it to be over with. So it was one of my quickest reads of the month because I was like just ready for it to be over. So like I said, not for me. Next, I read A Sorceress Comes to Call by T. Kingfisher, and I actually really enjoyed this one. This is loosely based off of the Goose Girl, which is a Grimm's fairy tale, and I am gonna have to like read that one. I somewhere used to have a book of Grimm's fairy tales, but I don't anymore, so I wasn't able to like quickly just look at it just to compare, but I've heard it's very loosely based off of the story. But anyways, in this, you meet our main character, Cordelia, and her mother, Evangeline. And from the very beginning, and it also says this in the synopsis, so this is not necessarily a spoiler, her mother is very abusive to her. She's a sorceress. Her mother is the sorceress. And she can make her be obedient, which means that she like literally can take over and control her body. So the opening scene is like them at church, and her mother is making her be obedient. She's making her sit there. And just the way that T. Kingfisher writes, you can tell how much like trauma she has, how afraid of her mother she is, and it's very palpable. It made it very engaging to like have that sense of dread of what's her mother gonna do. What did her mother do? So her mother ends up taking her to an estate of a well-to-do man. She's gonna try to get him to marry her. And Cordelia becomes friends with the man's sister, Hester. And Hester is like one of the best characters in the book. I love her. One thing about it is that she makes it sound like she's so ancient, and she's only in her 50s, but I guess also it's indicative of the like time period that it was supposed to seem like. It seems like very Regency, I guess. So in this, Hester realizes that Evangeline is not somebody her brother needs to be marrying, and so she's trying to put a stop to it. And eventually Cordelia and then also some other characters come in, and they're trying to help her to do that. Now, I really, really enjoyed this book, but I did end up giving it 4 stars, and that is because of the ending. The ending was not bad, but once all of the climax of the action happened and, you know, stuff is taken care of, the way this book wrapped up did not make that much sense. So really quickly, this is going to be a spoiler. If you don't want to hear this part, move to this time or mute me until you see the spoiler end screen that I'll create. In this, Hester gets her friend Richard to pretend to be marrying Cordelia, who, by the way, is like 14, but her mother's pretending that she's 17, okay? And so throughout the story, there's all of this talk of, oh, but it's going to look bad. It's going to ruin her reputation and this, that, and the other. And there's just a lot of talk about appearances and to other people and things like that. But then at the end, when everything goes down, and then of course Evangeline is dead. So at the end, Richard, who had been courting Cordelia, like to marry her, says that he's going to adopt her. And then of course she needs a chaperone. So the aunt, who had a thing for Richard the whole time, can go and live with them as her chaperone. Like, you were talking this whole time about like reputation, and then this man that was like gonna marry her is now gonna be her like adoptive father. That didn't make sense to me. But anyways, like, that ended up making it a 4-star. I feel like they shouldn't have done that. They should have just left it with Cordelia being Hester's niece and the squire's, you know, stepdaughter. And Hester should have just married Richard, or just been like, you know what, screw it, we don't have to get married, but we can like be a couple, whatever, screw everybody's expectations or, you know, propriety or whatever. But it didn't do that. It didn't have to do that in order for the two of them to be together, if that makes sense. Anyways, spoilers over. Next up, I read Dungeon Crawler Carl, and I was gonna skip this one. This is something that I have seen a lot of people read and a lot of people talk about how good it is, but I was like, I don't think I'm gonna like it. It doesn't seem like it's for me. It seems like it's gonna be a little bit ridiculous. I was so wrong. I will admit freely that I was wrong. I apologize. You should read this book, because you're gonna think that it's ridiculous and you're not gonna like it, but I think you will like this. Okay, so in Dungeon Crawler Carl, the concept is that our planet is like taken over by aliens, and just like in a split second, the entire world is just like shoved down into the earth and like rearranged to make this dungeon. And the reason is that the syndicate, like the alien worlds, have this game show. And in the game show, like, they take over these planets, and it's like, okay, well, if you want to live, you know, you can try to fend for yourself on the surface, or you can enter the dungeon, and if you get down to a certain floor, you win. And if you get down to another floor, like, you'll be able to exit the game, and, you know, you'll live comfortably, or, you know, whatever. I'm just obviously not giving exact details, but, like, it's a game show, right? But it's also set up like a video game. So it's constantly talking about like their stats, their constitution, their strength, their intelligence level, like all of these things. And they've got like health bars that pop up and things like that. So the concept is really different, like different than anything I've read. Anyways, I don't know. There may be a ton of this type of book out there. I don't know. I did end up giving this like a 4.5 star, because I'm not necessarily a big gamer, and so sometimes when it was getting into like the video game talk side of it, I was like, my attention was drifting, especially at the point where I had switched to the audiobook, because I was doing things around the house, and I would catch my attention kind of drifting. But it all came back in here, and this was the 5-star. Carl's Doomsday Scenario is the second book. This one got more into the plot side of it. Carl and his ex-girlfriend's cat, Princess Donut, are the main characters of the story. And of course, they're going through the dungeon. They're gonna do this thing, right? And so the first book, they're kind of in the training levels where you're just trying to get your experience points up and all of that kind of stuff. But as they're going down deeper, of course, things are getting more dangerous, but also you're starting to get more of the like background story of like the political system and how all this stuff works. and you are getting the impression, of course, you know, I haven't read very far, I haven't started book 3 yet, but you're getting the impression that, like, Carl's gonna shake some things up with this, you know, like, status quo that they have going on of the whole, you know, dungeon crawler world TV show thing that they do, right? As they go down, they're getting more popular, they're getting attention that they probably don't want, but I am loving that aspect of it. And I feel like from this book to this book, it got a little bit less technical details about, like, the video game kind of stuff. Like, I feel like it had to do it in here for the setup, but this one was perfection. I loved this. I also read Buried in a Good Book, which was a cozy mystery story. I was going to use this for one of my other reading challenges that I'm doing, but I decided it's on my 25 and 25 bingo, so I'm just going to use it, like, just to be able to peel that off of there. This was a 3-star, and it was solidly in the it's okay category. I liked the main character. I liked that she was an author. So in that way, it kind of gave some, like, Murder, She Wrote vibes, except it's a younger woman and she has a teenage daughter. So they're just trying to get a fresh start. And immediately upon arriving, they end up coming across a dead body. And of course, being an author who writes mystery stories, you know, she knows things, you know, and so she immediately kind of starts to annoy the local sheriff, as one does, who tries to get involved in the investigation. The reason that this was a 3-star is the mystery itself was a little random, and also the story started out very tight, but the ending, it just kind of fell apart for me. And I'm going to give you spoilers for this one too. I'm going to tell you what I did not like about this book. So if you don't want to hear the spoilers, skip ahead to this time and or mute me until you see the end spoiler screen. It gives you a reason to think that every single person that you come across in the story, just about, could be the murderer, except who the murderer was. So it gives you a lot of clues to think that it is her friend, the librarian lady. And I can't remember anybody's name, which is why I'm not using names. My bad. It turns out the library lady is an undercover FBI agent who is trying to get one of the other characters in the story. The murderer was her ex-husband. So the only clue that you got during this whole time to show that it was her ex-husband was potato chip bags that she knew the brand of because she bought them, her husband ate them, and they were an expensive brand, so she knew it wasn't like a hobo or whatever that had, like, broken into her grandfather's store and had been squatting there or whatever. At the end, it just was like, oh wow, my daughter's acting really weird and she's missing, because she found out that her dad was cheating on me with the lady that got killed because they have the same name, and she came across that name in an email, and then all of a sudden it clicked. And it was so, and then also the fact that it was like a exotic animal smuggling ring thing, that was a choice. But yeah, the fact that it just ended up being her ex-husband was wild to me. I didn't really like that, but I still gave it a 3-star because I did like the characters. I liked the main character Tess, and her daughter Gertrude. I I liked them. Also, by the way, she thought that it was the librarian lady, right? And so she was acting really weird around her, like, because she couldn't just keep cool, like, hey, I think you're a murderer, but I'm gonna, like, pretend like nothing's wrong, right? So she was acting, like, really weird, and she went to, like, get a gun that was, like, over the door of the cabin, because she's in her grandfather's cabin, by the way. And she, like, goes to grab it, but she can't reach it, and so it's, like, really awkward because the lady gets it down and hands it to her, and, like, is, like, real offended or whatever that she thinks that she's the murderer. And so she ends up hitting her over the head with the gun and knocking her out, and then leaves her a note, like, take 2 aspirin and don't call me in the morning, and, like, calls into the police station to report that she had been attacked or whatever. And I guess it was, like, the whole thing was just meant to make you think that it was the librarian friend lady, but it was just so weird. Like, why would you say that she got hit over the head, and then everybody just carries on like nothing happened? Like, it was kind of weird. I ended up giving this a 3-star. I will not be continuing with this series, so that's unfortunate. I just finished this last night. Last night was the last day of the month, so just in time to put into my March wrap-up. I read Quicksilver. I loved this. I loved this very, very much. So in this, you have Saris, who, she's kind of like Aladdin, you know what I'm saying? She's like one of those, like, street urchin characters or whatever. In the beginning, she's in trouble. She ends up stealing something that she shouldn't, and her brother ends up getting caught with it, and so she goes with them so that they'll let her brother go, right? From the very beginning, she's captured and about to be put to death, right? Well, she isn't, obviously, or there wouldn't be a book. She ends up being taken to the world of the Fae, which she did not think existed, but apparently it does. And she ends up making a deal with the main character, Kingfisher. She is going to help him figure out the Quicksilver, in the title, so that his people can use it. Like, they need it for they travel through it or whatever, so they need it for trade and, you know, other things, because his people are at war, and, like, he needs her to help him. I thought this book was very unique as far as, like, the aspect of the Quicksilver and it being sentient, and what she has to do to get the Quicksilver to do the things that they need it to do. I loved it. The romance was perfection, not cringy to me at all. I mean, I don't know your level of tolerance for romance in your fantasy. This is definitely a romantasy. The romance plot is a main point. Kingfisher is a world-class jerk at the beginning, but as the story goes on, you find out why he's acting that way, of course. I started this and was reading this at the same time, so I ended up kind of switching and mostly reading this and just kind of reading a few pages of this at a time. But then once I finished Carl's Doomsday Scenario, I had like 2 or 3 days left of the month, and I was like barely 100 pages into this. So I basically read this book in 2 days, because once it gets going, I couldn't put it down. I had to know what was going to happen next. I wish that I had waited, though, until closer to time for the next book to come out. The next book, I think, is supposed to come out in November. It's a long ways away. I've got to know what happens. There were all of these like twists and turns and things that I hadn't, you know, didn't see coming. The like ending scene, you know, where they like meet the big bad, didn't see that coming. Sort of, I mean, I did, but some of the aspects of it I did not see coming. The ending, when I read the end, like my jaw just dropped. I had like a very similar reaction to the ending of this as I had to reading Onyx Storm. And I think I have that on camera actually, because I was recording at this point, so I might stick that in right here. Yeah, like, really? That was the ending? Great. But anyways, this was definitely a 5-star read. I loved it. I devoured it once I actually started to get going with it. It was just very intriguing. The pacing was great. I never felt any like lull in the action or anything like that. The romance plot made sense to me. I do remember at the beginning, she was like, I can't stop staring at him, being like, girl, I got secondhand embarrassment. Stop staring at him. Like, pull yourself together, okay? But other than that, like, I guess it ends up making sense why. But yeah. Definitely would recommend this one. I loved it. So, would I recommend The Book of Lost Things? Yes, if you want to have something that's kind of like a reflection of growing up and it feels like a YA book, but also is not. So it still has that fairy tale quality to it, but is very much dealing with grown-up themes, then yes. That Time I Got Drunk and Saved a Demon, not really. I mean, unless you like reading about how, yeah, you're gonna look sus in that cloak. Like, what? I would say no to that one. A Sorceress Comes to Call. Yes, I think this was a good one. Just, you know, be aware that the ending, not the best. Dungeon Crawler Carl. Absolutely, yes. It's hilarious. Carl's Doomsday Scenario. Yes. Now, I would say don't, or maybe don't read these if you are offended by dude humor. There are some like graphic things. There's graphic things as far as like gory things, but then it can also have, you know, some like adult humor kind of situations going on. So be aware of that. I forgot to mention that, but I mean, it doesn't bother me. I thought it was really good. I loved both of them and would recommend them. Buried in a Good Book. There's definitely better cozy mysteries out there, but if you like reading about writers solving mysteries, so in that vein of like Murder, She Wrote, this would be okay. Definitely not as good as Murder, She Wrote, although I did think this was better than the one and only Murder, She Wrote book that I read. So that is it, all of my books for March. I am going to be filming my April spread and my reading journal soon, and I will get that posted. And I will also be posting about the magical readathon that I'm doing, the Aurelium readathon. It is the spring semester, and I'm going to be doing that for the first time this year. So I'm going to be setting up a spread in my reading journal and giving you my TBR, and then at the end of the month I will have filmed myself doing the challenge. So I will see you in one of those videos coming up soon. Thank you guys for hanging out. I will see you next time. Bye.